not really getting that involved in drum restorations these days, but when this kit showed up, I kind of had no choice. This is a late 60s set of Vox drums that were actually made by Trixon, a company in West Germany at the time. You may know their stuff. If you don't know the name, they're the company that makes those weird egg-shaped bass drums that look like they're sort of melted. Anyhow, Vox branded these as their own. Buddy Rich played them for a minute, and the James Brown Band in the late 60s played them, including Clyde Stubblefield and Jabo Starks, two of my favorite drummers of all time. They're the same sizes that those guys use, 9x13, 16x16, and a 14x20 inch kick. This kit is pretty beaten up and is going to need a lot of love to get back to life, but my goal at the end of it is to capture that actual Clyde Stubblefield Jabo Starks in the late 1960s with James Brown sound. All right, let's dive in. Clearly this kit has seen a lot of use. I'm told it came from an old hippie's garage in Oakland, California, something like that. Looks like it was played with only top heads, and probably the rack tom was stored in the floor tom. The hardware is pretty funky. It all has this sort of Jetsons vibe, you know, late 50s, early 60s designs. It uses the old screwdriver head rods, which are kind of a pain in the butt. I will definitely be replacing those with modern ones. Tension casings are kind of cool, except for they're almost all cracked on this little plastic backing. 5 of the casings have snapped off screws. I'm hoping not to have to replace these because they're hard to find. WD-40 and vice grips works most every time. Made in West Germany, back when that was a thing. Bass drum has these super funky T-rods with the Trixon logo. And I just discovered that the threading on the vintage rods is different from the modern rods, much finer. Maybe it's metric. So much for my plan of simply swapping out the rods. So maybe it's possible to swap out the threaded nuts that go inside the tension casings, but we will see. The hoops that came with the toms were not original, and a couple were actually slightly warped. So I just replaced them with brand new. These are the 1.6 millimeter steel hoops. They're thinner and lighter than modern 2.3 millimeter hoops, much more in line with what the vintage hoops would have been. Here's where we ended up tonight. All of this stuff needs to be cleaned, polished, and oiled. This stuff all comes from Drum Factory Direct and my friends at the Drum Den in Hoboken, New Jersey. It's all clean and brand new stuff. Nothing to do there. And this stuff is all going to eBay to help defray the costs. One tiny detail, the screws that held the tension casings on the drum came without lock washers. So I'm going to find the appropriate sized metric lock washer and add them on just so these things don't come loose during a session or whatever. Time to clean this stuff up. First thing, I'm going to start the little plastic inserts soaking in some dish liquid because they're pretty filthy. Next step, put on some music and polish all this chrome. See you in an hour or two. These ridges are a pain in the ass to clean, especially on some of the dirtier ones. Trying a wire brush, that kind of works. Chrome polish kind of works too. But I see why this design didn't catch on. All right, not perfect, but definitely an improvement. The one on the right has not been scrubbed yet. The one on the left has. You know, it's something. Okay, everything is clean and polished. Time to put it together. There's a pretty wide range of condition on the tension casings. Some are really clean, some are pretty chewed up, some have some corrosion, maybe from water damage. So I'll be putting the uglier ones in out of the way places, you know, the bottom of the bass drum, the backside bottom of the floor tom, etc. So the next step is to put the tension casings back together. I'm going to replace the original thin metric screwdriver head tension rods with brand new regular drum key rods and nuts. These are from Gibraltar, and I'm happy to say they fit exactly in the tension casings. So I'll be able to just swap the new ones in and take the old ones out. Get some oil in these casings, probably for the first time in many decades, if ever. Everything is assembled. There are the lock washers for each tension casing. One area that needs a lot of work is the hoops. The inlay is just shot. There's almost no original paint left on the hoops. Some sort of kind of aluminum paint. So, you know, gonna prime it, paint it with some aluminum, and try to figure out what color inlay to go in here, because I'm almost sure no one's selling that Gold Croco drum wrap anymore, and probably haven't for a long time. Okay, the shiny aluminum finish is just too bright. The original finish was a little darker, almost had kind of a hammer tone look. So I'm gonna have to go back to the hardware store and hopefully find the right color. Even the primer is a little closer to the original, but you know, that's just primer. Okay, this hammer tone finish was definitely the way to go. It looks pretty close to the original paint and ties in nicely to the gray of the plastic inserts. One final piece of the puzzle is just covering up where the cymbal arm would have been. Found this plate for sale on Reverb. It's just going to cover up the holes and protect the finish a little bit more. To go for that late 60s sound, I'm going to use Aquarian's high frequency heads all around. They're a lot thinner and lighter than just kind of the standard modern heads, and they definitely perform a lot like vintage heads, which were way thinner back in the day. People just weren't hitting as hard. For muffling, I started with 2 felt strips, one in each head. That wasn't giving me enough. I was still getting too much boom from it. So I'm gonna add a piece of 1-inch upholstery foam, cut to size. This is a bass drum muffling technique that Tony at GMS Drums taught me, and it works really well, especially for this kind of sound. I always use an Aquarian kick patch right where the beater hits, but I cut them in half and trim them down so that they're just covering the impact. Now, one other very important piece of the puzzle is the snare drum, and Clyde and Jabo apparently didn't like the Vox snare drums and just used the Ludwig Superphonic, the classic. This one's from 1970, came out a few months after the Funky Drummer. If you're going for that Clyde Jabo sound, get a vintage Ludwig Superphonic and crank it. Well, the cool thing is I feel like I have a great starting point for, you know, dialing in the Clyde Stubblefield Jabo Starks with James Brown 1969 sound. The hard part, of course, is playing and feeling like those guys did. So, you know, that's going to be a lifelong challenge, but that's cool. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it.